Hello dear friends, let us talk about urinary incontinence. This delicate problem affects 30% of the population. In most cases, it affects women. Urinary incontinence is the inability to control the bladder. That is, when a person performs the process of excretion of urine when he does not want it at all. Urinary incontinence is categorized into several types. The main one is stress urinary incontinence. Some people think that it is associated with psycho-emotional stress. But this is not true. It is a question of tension in the pelvic incontinence. That is, when there is sneezing, coughing, or when jumping, at this time urine can involuntarily flow from a few drops to a fairly voluminous amount. It can even be up to 500 milliliters. The next type of urinary incontinence is an emergency urge to urinate. That is, when a person wants to go to the toilet so badly that if he does not run to the toilet now, he should categorically drop everything. He will not be able to hold it in. Such a problem occurs with inflammation of the bladder. That is, it is cystitis, and also with impaired innervation of the bladder. This is also called hyperreactive bladder when it perceives stimuli from the brain as increased and overreacts. There is a certain distinct type of urinary incontinence called functional incontinence. That is, it is more characteristic of people of advanced age when they cannot reach the toilet because of their physical abilities. So they have, let us say, some kind of mobility problems. It can be people with disabilities. It can be people who cannot see well. They just cannot find the toilet. They have this problem. It can also be people with neuropsychiatric disorders. During all sorts of psycho-emotional stress, during depression, especially pronounced when a person simply refuses to go to the toilet. What can we do? This problem is widespread, and some people are quite easily helped by simple rules. What is the first thing that requires attention to urinary incontinence? First of all, look at your weight. In most cases, being overweight also puts pressure due to internal visceral fat on the bladder, and because of this, urinary incontinence occurs. That is, you just need to banally lose weight. The second point is constipation. If there is no daily defecation in a person, fecal masses also physically press on the bladder. In addition, just mechanical stretching of the rectum stimulate the nervous impulses of the bladder to the same stretching, and he accordingly stops holding urine. That is, the urine begins to leak. Fight constipation and you will feel much better. There is also a good method of exercises for the pelvic floor, Kegel exercises. They definitely help women, especially women who have given birth or women who have reached the age of menopause. Of course, urinary incontinence is better prevented than treated. Therefore, everyone who has older relatives, moms, grandmothers, urinary incontinence should pay attention to their bladder, to their condition of the perineum, and watch their weight. Make sure that there is no constipation. Also do simple exercises to exercise the perineum. We have a separate video about Kegel exercises. There is also information that there are foods and liquids that, when consumed internally, also overstimulate the bladder walls. These foods and liquids include caffeine. Even a small amount of caffeine can overstimulate the bladder and it stops holding urine properly. So you have to see if this is your case or not. If it is, eliminate caffeine, foods that contain high doses of vitamin C. This is citrus, natural and chemical formula of vitamin C. That is, you should try to skillfully consume such foods. Alcohol. In many cases, alcohol consumption also provokes urinary incontinence. Refuse to consume alcohol in such a case. All acidic, very sweet, salty products can cause this problem or aggravate it. What do? What do? Prove that you have struggled with excess weight, remove constipation, do regular exercises, exclude foods that can cost and not holding urine, and still you have a problem. There is a procedure for such cases. That is, it is not an operation, it is exactly a procedure that is performed ambulatory. A person comes, is examined, and the possibility and feasibility of this procedure is determined. That is, we are talking about the sealing of the urethra with the help of a special type of hyaluronic acid. The introduction of hyaluronic acid along the urethra causes its closure, and that leads to a better retention of urine. But the procedure itself is indicated in case of stressed urine retention. If we are talking about the situation when there is an imperative urge, that is, when a person cannot do anything, he must run to the toilet. Otherwise, he will urinate involuntarily, roughly speaking, in simple language. It is necessary to be examined for inflammation, because cystitis is caused by these urogenital infections or simply asymptomatic so-called bacteriuria when bacteria live in the bladder. That is, it is all treated and passes all the urinary incontinence. What should be tested? Such cases are usually past bacterial cultures in the urine, examination for chlamydia, ureaplasma, mycoplasma, trichomonas and gonococci, and a routine urinalysis which determines the presence of leukocytes. That is, whether there is inflammation or not. If inflammation is excluded, in such cases help anticholinergic drugs. That is, these are drugs like Sibutene. They reduce the sensitivity of the bladder, but they can cause a state of dry mouth. This person drinks more, and accordingly, they want to go to the toilet more. But here too, you can solve the situation simply. That is, make yourself time management. That is, you need to go to the toilet constantly. Let us say every 2 hours. That is, let us say you are at home. It is not a problem. Even if you are at work, you put yourself in the alarm clock. It gives a signal every 2 hours. And you go to commit it, regardless of whether you feel like it at the moment, strongly or not. How much came out? That is how much came out. Plus what other technique helps very well. That is, when committing urine and blowing, you hold the urine for a short time, a few seconds, and then you relax again and continue urinating. In other words, you do not need to do this every time you urinate. It is enough to hold urine 2 times a day, let us say in the morning and evening. There is also a very good technique that has acquitted itself very well, especially with stress urinary incontinence. When urine is emitted by coughing, sneezing, jumping, you feel the urge to go to the toilet, you feel that you want to go to the toilet, try for about 2 to 3 minutes, support the urine in the bladder. That is, do not urinate, walk around, distract yourself, and at the same time, you can slightly tense the muscles of the perineum in several stages. You can tense them 10 times, and you can afford it. You should also do this once a day, no more. That is, you do not need to hold your urine for a long time every time. 1 time a day, and let it be up to 10 minutes. Start with 2 minutes, go up to 10 minutes, and then go and urinate quietly. So this technique will also allow you to regain control over the perineal muscles, over the control over this urination and emptying, and why it was lost when it happened. These are all very multifactorial mechanisms, and it is possible to understand them, but we have to realize that we are interested in the result. That is, we can do these exercises to achieve the result. Besides exercises, in case of these stress urinary incontinence, the methodology can also help when, for example, you know that you are going to jump or you want to jump. You know you are going to jump and you are not going to hold your urine. Do it with mechanical support, that is, just hold your urethra and jump for a while. Also, this is done once a day, not more often. That is by doing such complex exercises, holding urine when you are in the toilet, holding the mechanical perineum while jumping, training your bladder by making you go to the toilet once a day. Not every time, once again, you will definitely improve the situation. And if at the same time you lose a little weight, beat constipation, the problem with the urine will disappear. And a very important point that urinary incontinence is not a disease, but it is a symptom. That is, it is very important to sort out what provokes urinary incontinence. That is, inflammation of the bladder, formation in women, as if it could be postpartum ruptures, which turned retro outward. So you should also rule that out. Check with your gynecologist. Regarding herbs, their effect is little proven. That is the only thing that in this hyperreactive bladder. If you, let us say, remove caffeine, you can replace it with any herbal tea. It can be chamomile, mint, melissa, which have a sedative effect, but the gastrointestinal tract, including, can help with urinary incontinence. I will pay special attention to athletes, that is, people who are regularly engaged in sports, especially jumping, running, and at the same time they have a problem with urinary incontinence. Here it is very important to follow a number of rules. That is, before you are going to do physical exercises, you need 3 hours not to eat. It is better to exercise in the first half of the day. That is, you woke up, drank water, and went to the toilet, naturally and exercised. Ideally, what happened is not only urination in the morning, but also defecation. That is, then you will not have any problems. If you cannot exercise in the morning, but only in the afternoon, stop eating 4 to 6 hours before exercise. Drink in small portions, meaning you can drink up to half a liter per hour of water, but stop drinking an hour before your workout. During your workout, you can drink as needed. In this way, you will hold your urine normally. And again, running, jumping, remember that there is a perineum, that there is such a problem that cannot hold urine. Work out, tense up the perineum, tighten up, relax it. It is simple, but it needs to be done regularly. I wish you good health. Please write what ways you are struggling with urinary incontinence. It will be very interesting for everyone to discuss this delicate problem. Thank you. Good health to everyone.